Hi, welcome to Highland Park Borough Update. I'm Gary Leslie, and today we have with us Mayor Gayle Brill Mittler. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
So let's get right to it. There are a number of things that you brought up at the reorganization meeting in January that the borough is focusing on. So let's talk a little bit about that. Downtown development. You had mentioned that, and that's sort of in tangent with another topic that you talked about, tax stabilization.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that Highland Park has been designated as in need, and this is in quote, in need of rehabilitation. That sounds dire. Could you explain what that means?
Sure. You have to understand the state sets the terminology for these things. As you know, we have a portion of our town that is an area in need of redevelopment. But when the redevelopment plan was put together...
What area is that?
It's primarily Raritan Avenue between 2nd and 5th.
Okay.
But when the plan was put together, there were certain properties that were left out of the plan. So if a developer wanted to come in and build something downtown, property number 1 might be in the redevelopment zone, but property number 2 might not, and property number 3 might be.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to find a way to address the situation of areas that are not currently in the redevelopment zone. An area in need of rehabilitation is the way we went with this. And the entire borough is now considered an area in need of rehabilitation. What that basically means is the municipality's infrastructure is over 50 years old. Could be anywhere from 50 to 100 or more years old. And as you are probably aware, a big portion of our town was put together in the 1920s. And so much of our infrastructure dates back to then. And that allowed us to qualify for being an area in need of rehabilitation.
Let's talk about that just a little bit more. The in need of rehabilitation classification, that's
Right.
done by the council or another body?
The council.
Okay, and that allows you to do redevelopment in any of the areas that weren't initially covered?
Right. It gives us some tools that didn't exist before to encourage a developer to participate in Highland Park.
And maybe you describe what a couple of those tools are?
Well, so for instance, now we are able to entertain a pilot agreement, which is payment in lieu of taxes. And don't get scared, that doesn't mean that someone's not giving us money to help run the municipality. It means that we as Highland Park get to keep a larger portion of the taxes that are generated off that piece of property than we would if it were just a regular piece of property.
So it's an attraction for developers to come in?
Correct.
Okay, now you also said that there's a conditional developer for some project downtown. What does that mean?
Conditional means a developer comes into the redevelopment agency, which is a separate agency, and it's chaired by Rosie Borough. I don't know if you know who she is, but she's an attorney by training and is wonderful at putting deals together, very energetic woman, and she has a terrific team working with her, like Randy Solomon and a bunch of other people who are equally as diligent, smart, and creative. So the redeveloper comes in and says, I am interested in these parcels, and I would like to consider a development there. And then the redevelopment agency accepts them as a conditional developer for that particular piece of property. And so there is someone who is interested in what I call the gateway area, which runs from approximately North 2nd, not quite the corner of North 2nd, down to basically where Papa John's is. And she made a presentation to the redevelopment agency on what she would like to do there, which is consistent with the redevelopment plan. which includes primarily retail or something downstairs and living upstairs. Right now, the developer is in the process of putting the properties together, making the purchases, determining whether or not any of the properties are contaminated. All of this goes into that whole thing. And then once it happens to be a woman-owned business, this developer, once she knows how much she's going to be able to acquire from that piece of property, she'll come and she'll make another proposal, and then we will take that to the public and let them see what's going on.
Okay. And do we have any idea what kind of time frame we're talking about with this? I know it takes some time.
Government works very slowly.
I
As a business owner, it's been, that's been the hardest thing for me to get used to. So, certainly I would love to see something happen in the next couple of years.
And that's a good enough estimate, because we want to make sure people understand that it's not next month or a couple of months.
And certainly we will have a lot of public input, not only at the redevelopment agency meetings, but the planning board and open public meetings. I'm very fond of open public meetings, by the way.
And what's the reason for that?
I think it's really important to get consensus from our residents in order for us to go forward as a municipality.
So that brings up an interesting point. As you know, somebody that's been here for a while, that there's been this tension between development / tax stabilization and maintaining a character in the town, the original, or at least an old style character of the town. Can you speak to that? I mean, do you think that one has to be sacrificed for the other?
So, way back when the redevelopment plan was first put in place.
When was that?
Early 2000s. There was a charrette, which is an open meeting where people get to give their input on what they want their downtown to look like. And so there were hundreds of residents that participated in that, and based on what they were looking for and the input they gave the planners at the time, that's what the redevelopment plan grew out of. And so the look of the downtown, what they wanted to see downtown, number of trees, and whether or not there would be curb cuts and that sort of thing, all came out of that charrette. So there was public input to that. Now, clearly, it's been a while since we did that, which is why, as we move forward and a developer comes in and puts plans together, those plans are then reviewed by the redevelopment agency, which is a board made up of residents, and then the planning board, which is also residents. Those are also both open public meetings, so people can come in and see what is actually being planned and give their comments.
We talked a little bit about how development and tax stabilization sort of go hand in hand. You mentioned that there have been new developments that resulted in tax revenues of over $500,000, which is a significant amount of money. Could you explain it a little bit and what those were? Growth
is good, as long as it's what I call, and many people call, smart growth. So what is smart growth? Smart growth is the kind of development and growth that does not have a negative impact on our infrastructure and our services. So downtown development, for instance, would be smart growth, because housing would be downtown. Many downtown developments have different requirements for parking than other off-site or out of downtown areas, because people who live in downtowns don't always want to drive their cars someplace, which is also consistent with our complete street strategy and our being New Jersey's first green community. So the over $500,000 that you quoted is a net number. That's how much net revenue to the municipality from new taxes from the new homes in the developments around town generated in 2016.
So could you name some of them so people understand what we're talking about? You said new developments.
Okay. So basically, there was the first development that opened on River Road. It's called Overlook, sort of across from Johnson Park.
Mm-hmm.
That development plus the first development to open on Cleveland Avenue, the Pulte development. That development is virtually sold out, and people have been living there long enough to generate a year's worth of tax.
So the property taxes from those two developments
Correct.
have generated approximately that much. There has been a rumor that's been floating around about the library, and as you know, and you've addressed it in council meetings several times, there's some concept out there that the library will be moving.
Mm-hmm.
Moving, in one of the rumors has, is one of the areas that you just spoke about. So can you address that? Is that anywhere right now? Is that really in the works?
So it is one of the proposals that came in with one of the with the conditional developer. I can't really talk more to it until it becomes more. It's more of a dream than a reality right now. But frankly, our library serves as our community center here. There are so many activities going on there. It is bursting at the seams. And the library board did actually come to the council about a year or maybe 2 years already, and to let us know that they were going to be needing to ask for additional funds to expand. So, you know, bringing a library downtown would bring new life, more life to our downtown. The idea of it moving into more than twice the amount of space that it has now. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Princeton Library, for example. The Princeton Library is in the downtown, and there's a coffee shop and tables outside and a tremendous, wonderful book collection, computers, computer rooms, meeting rooms, that sort of thing. And those are some of the things that our library is looking to do. They need to expand their computer areas. We do have a lot of students who do visit the library, but I will tell you that we also have a lot of seniors visiting the library, and they would like a little more quiet than the students give them. I don't want to discourage either group from using our library, but I'd like a library big enough to allow both groups to enjoy their time there.
So is this any place right now other than an idea?
It's in the dreams.
Okay. Now, you also talked and you mentioned earlier about infrastructure. I'd like to chat a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. There is an effort by PSE&G to upgrade the gas lines in town. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, as I mentioned, you know, our infrastructure dates back primarily to the 1920s. And we're not alone in that. Most of New Jersey, in fact, most of the Northeast, has the same situation. PSE&G recognizes that their gas lines need to be updated to be safer and also to provide better service. And so they came to us a few months ago to let us know that they were going to be redoing the pipes to the newer materials and safer materials on major roads in Highland Park. Most of those were done in 2016. They have some minor roads that they're going to be working on in 2017. Mm-hmm. Now, I know the streets are really torn up, and I made it very clear to PSE&G when they first came in that I did not want to see them leave the kinds of roads that they left the last time they had to come in and patch things up. And they did tell me that they would be patching things in the winter, But once everything's completed, hopefully in the spring, they plan on redoing the roads from curb to curb.
Okay. Now, another problem that we've had in town due to the age of the facilities, water main breaks. We've had them quite a few times. I know that you recognize this. Is there any update on that? What we're doing about that?
Yeah, so several things. First of all, we did have a spate of water main breaks and also a power outage that affected almost the entire borough for about 15 minutes in early January. Again, the pipes that our water runs through are of varying sizes and widths. And so there are pressure issues from trying to get the water from the wider pipes jammed into the smaller pipes. There are also valves in place that are old and sometimes don't function properly. We get our water from Middlesex Water, and we are talking with them about what needs to be done to improve that situation here in Highland Park. There's been discussions of redoing some of the pipes. There's also talk about a possible small water tower. So we are looking into some of those things.
The solar field.
Yes.
That will be in by Donaldson Park. Could you just talk about what's happening with that?
Sure. So tax stabilization, we managed to sell and to rent an underused portion of property here that we own in Highland Park to PSE&G.
And that property is where?
It's part of the Upper Meadows. If you look at the DPW building at the end of South Fifth and look a little bit to the left, you will see the property. Okay. It's called the Upper Meadows. And so they are putting a solar field there. They are renting the property from us, and the energy that is generated from that solar field, they will be testing to see how much of it can be redistributed through New Jersey's grid.
And when is this scheduled to happen?
Well, they were just approved through the planning board, and so I know they're not going to do anything in the winter, so I would look for it to start seeing some activity there in the spring. And
do you have any idea how long this takes once they start?
I didn't ask that question specifically, but
And let's address for the moment what kind of benefits Highland Parkers could see once this solar field is implemented. Is you mentioned that we're renting the space to them, so
correct.
there's some.
So there's net revenue that will be generated that comes into the municipality that didn't exist before. The other thing is we can all feel very good about contributing to clean energy here in New Jersey.
And people sometimes get a little bit confused about this. Some people believe that we have a solar park and therefore all our energy is going to be generated by these solar panels. That's not the case.
No. Most of the energy is going to go back into the grid for New Jersey. We did ask them to look and see if there's any of the energy that can sort of come back into usage down in the area where the Upper Meadows are, so where the apartment complexes are over there.
Okay, so let's switch a little bit to the quality of life category that you discussed. Now, you had you mentioned at the reorganization meeting that you established a new, and I want to get the name of this right, Refugee Immigration Task Force.
Correct.
That you've assigned Matt Hirsch to. Could you tell us a little bit about what the charge for that is?
Okay. So here in Highland Park, we have a number of new Americans. They may be refugees from other countries, they may be immigrants who just moved here recently, And in order for them to feel that they're more a part of our community, we established a Highland Park identification card. This is not just for immigrants or refugees. This card will be available to all Highland Park residents. And in fact, I just came from a meeting of the Association of Retired Americans, and a woman came up to me after my discussions and said how grateful she was that she was now going to be able, she grew up in Highland Park, I want to add, but she was now going to be able to have an ID card because she doesn't drive and she didn't have a license. These ID cards will enable any of our residents to get library cards, participate in rec programs, camp programs, and also we're going to hopefully work with Main Street and see if we can get our retailers to offer discounts or special events for people who have the Highland Park ID card. I'm going to be going to get mine as soon as the machine is set up.
So once this gets going, people will go to the senior center.
Correct. There will be 1 day a week that we will be issuing the cards. We're talking about whether or not to have people make appointments or just show up during certain hours.
And do you know a general forecast about when this will be kicked off?
Well, so the machine arrived, so that's step number one. And as soon as we get it set up and tested, I'm hoping by the end of this month.
So about the end of February, we're
Yeah.
looking to start this.
Yeah.
Now,
So that's one. That was step number one.
can I just ask you one more question about that? That's just to clarify. These ID cards are good within Highland Park,
Correct.
correct? Not, they're not. You can't go to New York and say, "Look who I am," right?
I mean, you can.
I guess you
don't know
could.
if it'll get you anything.
Well, that'll be when I interview the mayor there. Okay, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
So that was step number one on how to be a welcoming community for new Americans. As you know, there's been a lot of discussion lately about new Americans, refugees, and immigrants. I don't want to get into all of that, but I do want to get into what I'm hoping this new refugee and immigrant task force is going to be doing. And a good way for me to describe that is to talk to you about the Global Grace Cafe. As you may or may not know, there's a new restaurant in town that's run out of the Reformed Church called Global Grace. And it is run by a new family that arrived in the United States. I believe they're from Syria. And when they came to this country and moved into Highland Park, they wanted to feel like they were immediately going to be a part of the community. And so they took their cooking skills and started the Global Grace Cafe. The Global Grace Cafe serves Middle Eastern food, it serves Jamaican food, it serves food from the Congo, and it's run by refugees who have settled in the area. You know, we talk about Highland Park being a sustainable community, but sustainability means more than just environmental issues. And I'm really, really pleased with the way we are helping to make the lives of the new Americans easier here in Highland Park. So for instance, you've probably heard me talk a million times about the HP Gives a Hoot Fund, which is the Highland Park Gives a Hoot Fund. By the way, for those of you who don't know, the mascot of the high school sports teams is an owl, so hence the HP Gives a Hoot. That whole fund started when we found, on days when the schools were closed, which were not national holidays, we would have a bunch of kids hanging around the borough offices, and we would wind up giving them snacks or buying them pizza, and as it turns out, we have over 36% of our children on free or reduced lunch at the schools. So here were a bunch of kids with no place to go when school is closed, no meals available to them for lunch, and they found us. So the purpose of the HP Gives a Hoot Fund is primarily to make sure that these children have a nutritious lunch on days when schools are closed and businesses are open, so their parents are working. And we've raised thousands of dollars from donations for this program, and we've worked with both Elijah's Promise and the Global Grace Cafe to supply lunches for these children. I'm so proud of that program and how we're able not only to help our kids, but help the new families in town earn a living by preparing foods and being paid for them.
So let's just talk a little bit about mechanics. If people want to get involved in this, what should they do?
Okay, so the new chair of the HP Gives a Hoot Fund is Mike Buckman. Some of you may recognize he's a former Board of Ed member. And we have a Facebook page. It's HP Gives a Hoot. You can either contact us through the page, or you can call the borough office and ask for Monica Jackson, who is the employee spearhead of this program, and she will make sure that she gets your volunteer information to Mike, or if you want to make a donation, she'll tell you how to do that.
Okay. That's really all that I have. Do you have anything else that you'd want to cover?
So yes, I
Oh, you do?
We touched on quality of life,
Mm-hmm.
and there are a few other things I want to talk about. We will be opening our first after-school teen center for all of Highland Park's teenagers, high school age. And many of you may have seen that there's an empty lot where a former house was on the corner of South 6th and Benner, I guess that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is the site of our up-and-coming teen center. And you'll be hearing more and more about that as we finalize all of that. And the other thing is quality of life also extends to appreciation of the arts. And I'm really happy with the new joint program that Rite Aid has with the Mason Gross School of the Arts. I hope you've noticed what we call the Art Walk. The side of the Rite Aid building that is on the corner of South 4th has lighted window displays that are curated by the Mason Gross School and features artwork from the students there. And that is a rotating exhibit. It happens to be right opposite one of our downtown living room corners, so you can go and sit and have a coffee and appreciate the art in the windows there.
And we'll leave it at that for now. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been very informative today.
Thank you.
And thank you.